What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Camden Drexel Show. I am sorry I haven't been recording the past couple weeks. I've been trying to get people to hop on the show, but I did find one of my good friends now that I watched WrestleMania 40 with, and we'll talk about that a little later in the episode. And he met me, I'd say, a pretty long, not a long time ago, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Ron. I've known Camden for a little over a year now. We met together on a film set. Um, I'm an actor here in the area we live in, and uh, just kind of bumped into each other while we were hanging out. I think it came up at some point that we both enjoyed wrestling, and after that, we were able to find each other on social media, hung out a few times, bumped into each other a few times. Yeah, so more or less just kind of like how you hear about a lot of friendships starting nowadays is you bump into someone once and then call it the algorithm, call it the social media gods, call it the fact that we are being spied on constantly through our phones. We found each other very quickly on like basically every single website we both use. So that's kind of how we started to get to know each other and started talking.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But I'm gonna do the inspirational quote that I always pull with at every episode, and it is from Duke Ellington, and it says, "The problem is the chance for you to do what your best." What do you think about that, Ron?
The problem with the chance to do your best is was that right?
No, it's a problem is a chance for you to do your best by Duke
Okay.
Ellington.
I mean, I think it speaks to a great deal of reality. Duke Ellington, not to get too boggled into these things, but he was a very influential black musician. He would have in his life seen segregation at its worst and then us slowly coming out of it. He witnessed a lot of change in his life, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And he was one of the few black musicians who was able to kind of cultivate a white fan base even during segregation. I think it speaks to you can always try to strive to do better, and sometimes you might not be around to see the better, but he was undoubtedly a very positive force. And I could say that he laid down a lot of groundwork for a lot of black artists and black musicians to come after him. So, absolutely, I think that speaks very much to his character and his status within our still current zeitgeist in a lot of ways.
Interesting. I like how you worded that and went to the history of Duke Ellington. I really didn't research him much, but I like that quote, just how it's worded too, because the word chance is definitely, it can have a consequence for the good or bad, but it really depends on your choice. And choices can come with problems. But guess what? If you want to succeed and do something right, you're going to have a chance or a consequence. Either it could be good or bad that you can face. And you can do it for the better, or it's just something that you can learn because guess what? Mistakes make you smarter and that just helps you through your future. Whether it can be, say, doing homework, doing a side job, or just doing something around the house. So that's what's what I believe. It's definitely knowing your choices and knowing the consequences that could come out of it. But you always have to have um something that you believe in to where a problem is always gonna occur. It's just how you adapt to it. So
Absolutely. Um, and we all have different problems. We all have different struggles. Um, and like you say, it is a reality where you have to find a way to work through them, be it a issue your uh, with your work, an issue with your life, an issue with your social well-being, or even in more dire cases, an issue with the world around you. Um, and it's all about finding your own path through that.
I agree. I agree. You kind of talked about how we met already, but yeah, I was assigned on a film set to do audio, and Ron was acting, and I didn't even know who it was. I talked to him just a little bit while we were there, and then we just connected through social media, like you mentioned, and things just set
Mm.
off. And we'll talk about just a little bit later, but we did watch WrestleMania 40 together. We'll have our thoughts and talk about wrestling in general here in a second. But how did you get introduced to WWE, Ron?
Oi. Um, Wrestling was always kind of around in my household. I grew up with my mom. My mom was a big wrestling fan. When she was a kid, it was the NWA and Jimmy Crockett promotions. So she grew up with Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair and like the original kind of Southern wrestling style. And then when I was a very young kid, she was still watching WWE. So like some of my earliest memories are like Eddie Guerrero winning his belt, John Cena first appearing, the kind of later day Kurt Angle stuff. And so it's always been around in my life. But the first time I really got invested into it was when I was probably 7 or 8. There was a DVD released that was a documentary retrospective on the Macho Man Randy Savage. Um, and I had never heard of him because this was at a time in which he was kind of blacklisted from the WWE, and to this day we don't really know why he was, but they just weren't talking about him until after he died, basically. But I watched this DVD and it was presented like a boxing retrospective where you didn't have wrestlers. You just had two people who were describing the stats of his victory to loss ratios and laying down the greater stories and then seeing the best of his matches. The first match on that DVD was him going up against George the Animal Steel, followed up by him going up against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, which is still like one of the greatest matches of all time. And I was so captivated by Randy Savage. You have this guy who is unbelievably massive, and he's, built like a Greek god, has this ooh yeah gravelly voice, and he can really like start shouting or whispering, and you're always watching him. But the thing that really drew me to him was, and this kind of get a bit personal, I realized from a pretty early age that I was gay. And I had a hard time kind of coming to grips with that because I grew up in a very small town. We had about, 300 people there. And for the most part, aside from my grandparents, really, there weren't many people there who would have had a positive opinion or a positive outlook on people who were not heterosexual, to put it bluntly. And me seeing this guy who is so cool and so strong and so popular, and he's wearing these outlandish outfits, like these crazy rainbow colored glittery capes and these wild like space cowboy costumes, and he is so in love with his manager Miss Elizabeth, and he has a great interview where he basically says, "I'm the macho man and I feel every emotion there is to feel. That means I laugh, I cry, I hug. I'm not afraid to show my emotions because that's what strength is, when I'm not afraid to be the macho man, even when the macho man is sad." And it's like, he kind of broke me of a lot of the bad thinking that made me kind of ashamed to be myself. So as a result, that was kind of my gateway, was through the late great Randy Savage.
Interesting. That was great storytelling right there, and that's one of the main things that really got me into wrestling. But not as a young kid. I just saw inspirations. Like my first people that really drew me into wrestling was John Cena.
Mm.
Funny enough, but I also was liked Batista when he was the world champ. What else could I talk? Randy Orton during '09. One of my favorite Randy Ortons ever. Like that storyline was great. Who else? Who was really? I was probably about. When I was 6, I watched it a little bit. Morely when I was 10, I I was getting into it more, watching Friday Night SmackDown, whenever Raw was. I wasn't watching pay-per-views because my parents weren't buying it, so I just watched the weekly episodes. But now that it's accessible everywhere, it's easier to watch. But really, when I went to my first show, when was that? It was like 2013, 2014. I went with my dad and my stepmom, and I was wearing the sheet mask for the Wyatt family.
Yeah.
And one of the members from the Wyatt families from where I'm from back home, and I actually 6 years later, after that show, I met him because my niece was being born, and I talked to him. It was great. Luke Harper's one of the most caring, nice guys that you can talk to if you saw him out of the ring. But sadly, he passed away a couple years ago, and that really broke my heart. But
Yeah.
no, just wrestling has been a release from stuff that's gone on with me personally, or just like it's just an escape. It's just you don't have to think about anything else. You think about the storyline. You think about the wrestlers. You think about, oh crap, what's gonna happen next? Because there's a lot of hang lines, and it's just WWE really inspired me to like be the person I am now, and it's been a big impact on my life that I really can't draw back from. And I'll tell people I really don't care. I love wrestling. I really do. It's helped me through a lot, and it's just a release point, like I said, from reality. You don't got to worry about anything.
No, absolutely. And it's such a beautiful thing when wrestling is great. When wrestling is great and everything is going as it should, there's not a sport, there's not a form of entertainment, there's not a performance that is as captivating in its own unique way. Um, and sometimes it's not great. In fact, a lot of times it's not great. Be that because, bad creative, or you see people who have their own demons, and sometimes those demons get exploited by the business, just like any industry and entertainment and really in sports too. But uh, when it can connect, it changes you. It can give you a lifetime of love for these people that were able to really touch you in that way.
I agree 100%. 100%. So, Ron, we watched WrestleMania 40 together.
We did.
What do you want to talk about? As Cody says.
Um, I mean, I want to jump straight to Cody, but I want to hold off because there was a lot of really cool stuff we watched. One of my favorite matches of the entire night, or rather the entire 2 nights, really was seeing Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins go at it. I adored everything we saw in the ring from those two. It was so smart, the storytelling, and it was something that was going to also come up in Cody's match, was the fact that Seth was so hurt from the night before, still selling the injuries. And like literally as soon as the bell rung, Drew was able to get a kick off on Seth, and Seth struggled. He almost got counted out right then and there. And it just kept building up, building up, building up. It was so quick, so kinetic. Drew McIntyre, it is amazing a guy that size is that quick even now, because I think now he's getting closer and closer to 40, and he's still just so quick on his feet. And then you had that great little angle at the end with CM Punk, and of course you then had Damian Priest coming out and cashing in his Money in the Bank. Something that you called, I will say this, Camden called that there was going to be a cash in, and I was convinced there's no way, because that was something Seth did all the way back at 31. There's no way they would ever do that again at a Mania. Well, I ate crow. Granted, this time around the match did actually end before the cash in happened, but even still, that means, Damian Priest gets to have that rarefied air alongside Seth Rollins being the only two to cash in at Mania.
It's crazy. I called a lot of stuff night two. Night one, I was completely off with a lot of stuff that happened, but we'll get more into it. But yeah, no, I agree with the first match. The first match was definitely a good starter to the match, and I kind of like how Triple H put into the aspect of, oh, Seth Rollins is in the match. Look what he did 9 years ago to cash in on to make. It wasn't really a triple threat because the match was already over, but it gave the start of a storyline between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, and then going into the Raw after for the main event, CM Punk costed Drew again another title shot. So it's just going to be a great storyline between those two coming in probably SummerSlam. But it's just the little things that Triple H is doing. He's one of the best head creatives I think in a while. And that's why this era is going to probably be really good. And they started it off with Cody being champ.
Without a doubt. And I don't want to get us too off topic, but while we're talking about CM Punk, because this was really the only match he was really out there for. Um, did you see the AEW fiasco?
Yes, I did. It's so stupid and freaking the views, the ratings, everything's down in that company. I really don't know what they're gonna do. And
Yep.
it really wasn't CM Punk's fault. It looked like there was just a hassle between the two, and it could have been stopped. But because there's like 5 to 6 other people around there that could have broke those two up and just had them go separate ways. But no, it's just the
Uh,
little stuff that they're doing in the locker room is like, dude, it needs to be controlled.
yeah, and just to give context for anyone who may not know, maybe people only watch the WWE stuff, maybe people only watch your show, and they don't watch wrestling. But for anyone who doesn't know, there's a huge wrestler named CM Punk. I say huge in terms of popularity. He's been around for a very, very long time. He had gone over to the other big wrestling company called AEW. He was there for a couple years. He left on very acrimonious terms after a backstage fight. Came over to WWE, where he is now even more popular than ever, it seems. People are adoring him when he can't even wrestle right now because he's injured. And AEW, they decide the way that they take a shot at CM Punk or otherwise try to get ratings in is they released backstage footage of CM Punk getting into a fight with one of their wrestlers, that being I believe his name is Jack Perry, but his working name is Jungle Boy. And the people who did this were the executive vice presidents of the company, which are also a tag team named the Young Bucks. Tony Khan, who is the CEO of the company, had made multiple comments before this talking about how he feared for his life and CM Punk was lunging for him and CM Punk was this madman, this monster, he was going to kill people, which outright is slanderous to say, but that's what his story was. And the Young Bucks were the ones who pushed this forward, to my understanding. Like Tony Khan was not big on it, but the Young Bucks, who are his right hand guys, were insisting we need to show this. So the Young Bucks show this video. They don't comment on it, they just play it out. And it's one of those things where, like, I think in their minds, they thought they show the video and everyone's going to be on their side. When you see the video, it is clear that Jungle Boy and CM Punk are having a pretty intense argument. And it seems like Jungle Boy gets into CM Punk's face, CM Punk pushes him away, and then puts him into a chokehold. And I'm going to say right now, I am not going to say like, oh, CM Punk was in the right. I'm not going to say the Jungle Boy was in the right. It seems like two dudes got angry at each other and it played out in the worst way it could, short of someone getting seriously hurt. And then, like you said, Camden, a lot of people came over, broke up that fight. They could have stepped in a lot sooner than that, but they waited until they were actually fist flying. And then CM Punk leaves the company. And the reason they did this, according to the Young Bucks, is that they wanted to give people a reason to cheer for the Young Bucks opponents at a next big wrestling show, the Young Bucks opponents being the FTR. And instead, what happened was later in the night when FTR came out, people couldn't stop chanting for CM Punk. And then when the Young Bucks came out, people kept chanting for CM Punk, which means now your whole company looks even worse because they're chanting for a dude who's on the other channel. And you also come off as looking extremely petty because you waited until a guy is gone and can't defend himself on live television, going to potentially millions of homes, to talk shit on him.
Yeah, the controversy is real, and freaking, it's just so funny to see all the comments on Twitter, on TikTok, and all that. I just believe in the next 2 years AEW is gonna be as low as the viewership with TNA. I bet you TNA is gonna do better than them. This is what I'm thinking.
I could see that TNA has like a lot of groundswell right now. Like I think they have a new toy line coming out even. Like there's people interested again.
Yeah, and also I think WWE is gonna have them connected as a show, part of WWE, or that's what I heard from the Khan that worked for WWE, not the Tony Khan that works for AEW.
Oh,
So
hey, which one is that? Nick Khan?
Nick Khan, yes, that's Nick Khan, yes,
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
no
But it's
relation.
it's yeah, no relation, but that's what I heard from an insider on Twitter. But
Hmm.
what are your other thoughts on WrestleMania 40? Night one, I love the Rhea versus Becky match. That was a great opening match.
Oh yeah. And two of the best women's wrestlers of all time. Two of the best wrestlers of all time, Becky and Rhea. Um I think the right person won absolutely. Rhea continuing her championship just domineering storyline, and Becky looking great. Like I never left wrestling, but I had become a little bit less interested when around 2016, 2017. But Becky Lynch was always someone I really adored. Seeing this match, like, it was awesome. I hate that Becky isn't around as often, but at the same time, she has a kid now, and uh, I would rather Becky be healthy and have a good relationship with their kid, as opposed to a lot of older wrestlers who kind of had to forego that. Um, but just a wonderful match, very good match. And kind of alongside that, just talking about night one, you had that great tag team match between Roman Rock versus Cody and Seth, where The Rock blew me away. I was expecting him to look really bad in that match just because he's older and has been gone for so long, but he actually had a good. He could still move really well, considering.
I agree. I agree. He did. From what I've heard on social media, I am active on Twitter for the WWE reasons and insiders and all that. Supposedly, he had, or somebody from the company flew wrestlers in that are like still currently wrestling and had him wrestle with The Rock so he could be ring ready. And it showed. He looked pretty good. I saw a little lackluster, but his selling was a little bit better than usual, especially with that spear from Roman. Oh my God, that was so funny.
Mm.
Oh my, that was such a meme. And then with night two, I can talk about that in a little bit. But dude, the faces he had, the memes that were made this weekend, it's I would say right now it is the biggest WrestleMania of all time, just because of the numbers and the attraction, the engagement, the followage, the money they made. Even The Rock made $10 million from shares from WrestleMania, which I saw that on Bleacher Report, which that's crazy because he's a partial owner of TKO.
Right. It's insane, but also, like, I'm not gonna say that WrestleMania 40 is like the greatest WrestleMania ever, just because I think it's so new. I don't think you can really make that determination yet.
I agree.
But undoubtedly, it was unbelievably successful, both critically and financially. And when you look back at the great manias, it's funny that WrestleMania 10, WrestleMania 20, WrestleMania 30, and now WrestleMania 40. Each time that WrestleMania is divisible by 10, it's always the crowning of a new champion that really kind of redefines everything. Because 10, it was Brett winning the belt. Granted, that was his second time winning, but it was when WWE finally got fully behind him. And at 20, it was Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, which tragic, but at the same time, that really did what the fallout of Eddie's death, and then especially Chris Benoit's death, like that made a much needed change in wrestling culture. 30, you had Daniel Bryan, which kind of ushered in the age of like this new athletic wrestler, and you don't have to be 7 feet tall to be the champion. And finally, here at 40, we have Cody. First time in a very long time I've seen a pure good guy get cheered so universally and never get heckled or booed by even the Philadelphia crowd, who usually always like the heels more than the faces.
Yeah, you bring a good point, and just the storytelling, because Triple H is one of the best long term storyteller. Because there was something that happened with Seth on night two. He did say 2 months beforehand, "I will be your shield if the bloodline comes up," and he was. He
Hmm.
brought in a chair. He got speared by Roman, and then Roman hit him with the chair, and that literally what was happened. That what broke up the original Shield with Dean Ambrose. I thought Dean Ambrose was coming out, but no, it was Seth Rollins coming, and we didn't see it.
Hmm. It would have been awesome if John Moxley could have come back at the same time.
Oh my god.
He's happy in AEW, but it was still so cool that I'm not saying that like I think this was going to happen. I just if there is a reality where this is the last Mania with Roman Reigns, it's so awesome that it was this great bookend, and it was him choosing revenge over Seth over finishing off Cody that ultimately cost him the belt.
Yeah, supposedly he's gonna be at the SmackDown before SummerSlam, and from what I've heard from my buddy, he's seen it on Twitter. Roman might bring back the Universal title because now they're calling Cody the WWE champion, not the Universal champion. So
Mm.
they might have Rock and Roman do that for Mania next year. But all you heard was people crying and getting hugs. I hugged Ron because I was freaking so happy that Cody won. But all you could
Mhm.
hear at the end of the match was this. Oh my god. His song played about what, 5 times after the match because of the celebration?
It feels like it, and you had basically like all the great good guy wrestlers come out and pick him up on their shoulders, give him hugs. Like again, like a parallel to Bret Hart at WrestleMania 10. Like they literally just hoisted him up, and he was showered with adulation. He went out and hugged Michael Cole. He hugged his mom. Um, the thing that I thought was really cool was he got on the microphone and asked Bruce Pritchard and Triple H to come out, uh, just to really show his thankfulness that they had also given him their support backstage for all these years.
Yeah, because of the things that he went through and how close he was to those people because of his father. Like
Hmm.
all preaching Dusty Rhodes, we all love him, but he helped a lot of people and the people that are wrestling now and the big people be who they are. And the thing
Yeah.
is too, um, what I thought was amazing was what you just mentioned, all the people coming out besides Triple H and them. Those were people that all faced the bloodline in the past 4 years. Did you notice
Mm.
that?
Yeah, because who all was it? It was Seth Rollins. It was Jey Uso. There was LA Knight out there. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. Randy Orton came out, which was an awesome like little legacy callback.
Yup.
Um, basically, just every single majorly beloved John Cena out there too. I almost forgot. Imagine a world where John Cena is the one I almost forgot, but he was out
That's
there too,
crazy.
also hoisting up Cody. It was awesome. It's one of those. It's one of the few times in wrestling I can remember where they're going back to kind of the old school days. Because back in talking about the NWA, talking about Dusty. Every time Dusty or one of the good guys won a belt, all the other good guys came out to like shake hands and pick him up. And I kind of always loved that idea that the good guy wrestlers all like each other. Like they're all buddies. And there might be rivalries, but they're not like at each other's throats.
Yeah, unlike
Um
the whole AEW situation.
yeah. Um or even like, in storyline with WWE for the past 20 years, where it just felt like there is not a single wrestler here who likes another wrestler in terms of their characters. Backstage they're all buddies from the seams of it, but you know, it's hard for me to think of a single time that didn't involve a tag team in the past, basically in my lifetime, in which say like John Cena won the belt, and then I don't know, Kurt Angle or Eddie Guerrero or Daniel Bryan came out and like gave him a handshake or a high five. It felt like they, especially with Vince behind the wheel, they kind of stripped away so many of those cool little moments that really help fill out the universe and the characters of these wrestlers, like knowing which one of them's as characters are have each other's backs. It's so cool when the entire company can be interconnected like that, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. And it's the in front of the camera part that like has just been completely missing for so long.
And I feel like the release of documentaries, like the one with Roman recently, the one
Mm,
with Bray Wyatt, that was great.
mm,
It's just the more release of content that we see behind stage and we see all this interaction between them, it's great because we get to see it behind the scenes. We would never see that during the Vince McMahon era. Once every year, probably or 2 years, we would see stuff like that.
mm.
And it's great to see stuff behind the camera and see who they actually are compared to what you didn't see back then.
Right. And this isn't me trying to like be a punk. I'm just making an observation. Wrestlers, they're athletes. They're like stunt people. You could say that they're like actors, but I'd honestly say they're more like stunt people. But even still, when you really like an actor, you of course love the characters they play, but you also would like to enjoy and know about the person they really are, understand their method. Um, and it's one of these things where, like, I'm not saying I want to look at a wrestler and not be able to tell where the character ends and the real person begins. What I'm saying is I like seeing wrestlers being friends, both as characters and also in real life. That's why Up Up Down Down was so cool for so long, was everyone seemingly just loved the New Day in real life. So they'd go and play video games with Xavier Woods every day. And so that's so sweet. Like I adore that. I adore seeing, I don't know, Seth Rollins losing his shit because he doesn't understand how to play Mortal Kombat or something like that. That's fun. It's fun to see that.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah, just the behind the scenes stuff is all cool nowadays rather than. And now you see Triple H posting pictures with the champions or like the new people that are like popular right now, like LA Knight. He still hasn't won a title, but look how popular he still is. He still is.
Mm.
Like I feel like his time might be this year. We don't know. It just depends on how they want to turn his story. And I trust Bruce Pritchard and Triple H. Those are the main two people that really are doing the head stories for other
Hmm.
people. So
I do think that's so funny that and not to get into it, but the Vince McMahon stuff being so bad. It amazes me that Bruce Pritchard, who, let's be honest, was a probably the biggest Vince McMahon guy ever, like his right hand man for decades, came back and was also his right hand man again. I'm so amazed that he seemed to transition so well to being underneath Triple H. And those two together, as well as their other writers, it seems like they're just a powerhouse right now. Like, not every idea is gold, but when they hit it, they're hitting it harder than it's been hit in a very long time.
I agree. I agree. You really didn't talk about Vince much there, but it just gave an aspect of one person just changing directions in their career and it is working out for the better now.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't the biggest fan of Vince and creative because some stuff was getting old and all that stuff. But what Triple H is doing now, and what he did in NXT, that's why NXT succeeded, and that's why he got boosted up to where he is now, because
Mm,
they trust him.
mm,
And just look what Shawn Michaels is doing in NXT. Look how popular it is. You
yeah.
got Trick Williams, you got Carmelo Hayes, you got Roxanne Perez. All those people are popping off, and they might even be in the draft now. And then people from that aren't succeeding in Raw or SmackDown are gonna go to NXT and rebuild themselves, and then the crowd's gonna love them.
Mm,
So, all right, let's move past WWE and WrestleMania 40, and let's talk about collecting figures or Funkos. Me more Funkos, but you with old retro figures or whatever you're collecting. I still haven't seen your collection yet, but I'll let you talk about it.
yeah. And Camden, I'll out myself, but Camden mentions he hasn't seen my collections because my collection room is an utter disaster most of the time. Because I love collecting things and I love trying to display things, but I'm never good at finishing the displays. Um, but yeah, I collect a lot of things, a little bit of this and that, but my big collection has always been collecting wrestling toys. And my absolute favorite thing to collect are the old vintage WWF Hasbros from the 90s, which if you've never seen them, look up a picture of the WWF Hasbro toys. They are, to me, the most perfect action figures ever. All the wrestlers are cartoony. They all have gimmicks that are unique to them. So, for instance, you can get a Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan's gimmick is he flexes. So you pull the arms back, and then they come back, and they could punch someone on either side of the head. Or like Macho Man, his gimmick is that he has his elbow drop still. But you look at them, and they're just like perfect representations of the idea of what these characters are. Like obviously, they don't look lifelike at all, but they're these caricatures that like you look at any of them and it screams what this wrestler, who they were, why the crowd loved them. And for some wrestlers, they looked better as the toys than they did in real life. The best figure they probably ever did was Giant Gonzalez, who's like one of the worst wrestling gimmicks of all time and looks so bad in real life because it's just a really skinny, tall dude in a muscle suit covered in fur, with most of that fur being around his crotch. So it looks like he just has like no manscaping whatsoever. But then you look at the figure, and the figure, you realize, oh my god, the idea was he was going to be 9 feet tall and look like Sasquatch. And that just didn't translate in real life. But the toy kind of makes you realize that that's the kind of the direction they were going with some of these characters. And nowadays, a lot of new companies like Mattel, who's the main WWE toy manufacturer, and then smaller companies like Zombie Sailor Toys, Hastel Toys, uh, Epic Toys, they're doing figures in this style still. So we're getting modern guys like CM Punk and Nick Gage and Matt Cardona, John Cena. But then we're also getting a lot of the older guys that we never got before, like Slick, who is a really cool manager. I just ordered him today. The One Man Gang, Mabel and Mo from Men on a Mission. They just put up pre-orders for the Rougeau brothers. So if you like the Mountie or PCO, their original tag team from back in the late 80s, early 90s is up for sale right now. And it's so awesome. Like I adore these figures so much because they can get to be kind of expensive, I will admit, especially from the smaller companies because there's so few of these figures that are actually made and released. Um, but like they also give you just this unbelievable lineup that's just all what's good and great of wrestling. And there's a lot of other lines I collect, but that's always been my main line. But that's what I collect. Those are my figures. I know Camden, you're bigger into the Funko Pops.
Yeah, I am. I was gonna say something, but I waited until you finished. You gotta finish your not your story, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Mm,
You gotta finish your collection, like putting
yeah,
up and setting up. That's what I meant. I was trying to
absolutely.
make that kind of like a joke, but it didn't turn out well. But oh well.
I got to finish the story of the display.
Exactly. Finish the story display. There you go.
There we go.
Um. Yeah. No. I actually after Mania, Ron gave me some pops that he wasn't having, and I actually have them set up in my closet. There I have my other Funko Pops. I love that. Then NWO Pops are my favorite with Hulk Hogan. Who else?
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, I
I
think.
love it. I've always loved NWO and their theme. Oh, I loved that, like just that group and that faction, and I'm happy that they're bringing back all these factions. And I actually am gonna order the Final Boss Funko Pop soon, before it.
Hell yeah.
But the thing is, it ships out after my birthday, and it might be when I come back here, which I'm gonna be pissed about. But oh well.
They'll be waiting for you when you go back home. You'll just have to build up the anticipation.
Yeah, to see the Final Boss.
There you go.
Exactly. But no, my wrestling Funko collection started, I think. Oh my god, I think it was when there was an FYE exclusive. Seth Rollins was my first one, and then I got Undertaker, the original one, and
Yeah.
I've collected them since. Like I have both of the new Liv Morgan pops, the one where she has the title, and then the one that is the Funko on a Run. So, yeah, I love the WWE line. It really depends on who the wrestlers are. I don't even care if it's not worth much or anything. I'm in love with WWE and just the stories, and I love the figures. And thank God it's not like Marvel or like Star Wars to where they're bobbleheads.
Yeah.
But I want to see them come out with Funko chases or like just the Funko sodas, because I have a chase of Stone Cold actually right on my desk, and he has the old WWF belt, and I love it. I looked for it for so long, and I found it at one of the local stores here, and it's just great. I love it. But I used to collect just the regular Mattel figures, and then I stopped for a while. I feel like it's too expensive to get those figures like that. I'd rather collect Funkos that are cheaper and something that I can keep in box. And I don't know. I just don't see those figures going for much later in my life, and they don't have sentimental meaning to me. So that's why I got into Funkos, and I talked about that in my episode with my buddy Sam, and he got me into collecting Funkos, and it's just Funko's one of my main things I collect. I used to do Pokemon cards. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing some alternate covers for comics, but I'm a big person about story, and WWE is that. It's literally all about story. Like, yes, it's scripted and all. It's a little fake story wise, but the actions and the stunt work they do is real because they actually do get hurt. Sometimes they're faking it, like you just mentioned with Seth Rollins, um, faking his injury to sell it. Like selling something is basically them faking it to convince the audience, like, oh, look what happened.
Mm.
But that's just my idea on wrestling and all that stuff. But where do you think WWE is heading in this new era of the Paul Levesque era?
Um, I think a big thing to remember is you never know when the pendulum is going to shift. I'm loving where it is right now, but who's to say how great it will be in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years? But I'm more optimistic for WWE than I have been in a long time. But in all honesty, I think the thing that you can really look forward to, and the thing that I think is the best thing, and it needed to have happened a long, long time ago. I think WWE is going to be a company that gives greater value to the safety and well being of its wrestlers. You know, I can't tell you how many of my favorites aren't here anymore. When I was growing up, it was a thing where, like, every Raw, it felt like there was another person dead because drugs, because of lifestyles, because of people who were legitimately hurt by the business. Um, and nowadays, you look, and you got some of these curmudgeons. You got your Ric Flairs of the world who talk about how all these kids today are playing video games instead of going out partying, and you're right. They're going and they're spending time with each other. They're playing video games. They're living well, and it's becoming rarer and rarer to hear about wrestlers who are dead at 40. You know, it hurt so bad when John Huber, Luke, Luke, I can't even remember. It was not Luke Harper. There we go.
Yep.
Uh, when he passed away, and then Bray Wyatt when he passed away. They both died tragically of disease. But it wasn't so long ago that people a lot younger than them were dying, and it was always that could have been avoided had there been help for them, had there been a support system for them. And WWE and wrestling in general didn't provide that. So I think it's going to be an industry that treats its performers better, keeps them safer, keeps them healthier, and honestly, I hope it promotes them to just enables them to be happier, enables them to realize just how much they are beloved by their fans, and we never have to hear a story of a Jake the Snake Roberts or a Scott Hall or any of the great wrestlers who suffered from their addictions and felt like there was no one who cared about them because a lot of them died before they were able to find out just how much people loved them.
And just medical, like in general, has gotten better over the years, and it'll still keep getting better. But with AI now, WWE has nothing to do with it, I don't believe, and they can do a lot of good things with the medical, and people can be more safe, and there's just a lot of good things that can come out from wrestling, and it can be something as small as, oh, I look what I just watched for 2 hours. Wow, that's interesting. I know it can be fake, but wow, that's cool. It's like just
Mhm.
something like that can attract somebody, and they're like, oh my god, I'm gonna keep watching this. It's all about story, and that's what I think Triple H is putting in a good era of wrestling because of the story he's putting out,
Mhm.
and that's where I think the WWE is heading. If they can keep the right creative heads in where they're at, they're gonna be successful, 100%.
Well, without a doubt. And a thing you can't take away from WWE, for good or for bad, WWE is synonymous with wrestling. As wrestling fans, people like you and me, we know about AEW, we know about TNA, we know about New Japan. These places are all great. and they all have wonderful people working there. They can all have really cool matches. But when you find just common Joe Schmo on the street and you tell them wrestling, they're thinking about WWE. They're thinking about Hogan. They're thinking about John Cena. They're thinking about Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock. Um, so they're always going to be around. For as long as there is wrestling, there will be WWE. The difference was before it felt like the dinosaur that wouldn't kill over, like The Simpsons. But now there's been a shot in the arm, there's been a kick in the ass, and it feels like not only are people there happier working, but they're so much more engaging and allowed to be more engaging by Triple H, by Bruce Pritchard, by these creative heads that are now able to flourish, whereas before they were all at the beck and call of a 80-year-old dude with who knows how many concussions.
I agree 100%, and it's just it's headed in the right direction for the wrestling company. That it's their dream, and how open creative is now, and wrestlers coming up to Triple H and telling them what they would want to do or want to see. It's great to hear and great to see,
Mm.
and I can't wait to see what Triple H does. And just not even with Cody's story, but like there's so much things where you could be a mental block, but when you have a lot of good people like there are now in WWE creative, there's so much story that can be told that you're like, holy crap, I didn't think that. Oh, what if they do this? What if they do that? They have all those thoughts that could be similar, that could be completely wrong, but I think WWE is it's gonna really make a lot more people happy, and it's definitely getting a lot more traction than it would have 20 years ago.
Oh, without a doubt. I think this is in my lifetime because, I was born in 99. So in my lifetime, I think this is the hottest, the most popular, the most successful wrestling has ever been as an industry. Because I was born at the tail end of the Attitude Era. When I was growing up, when you were growing up, we went through the Ruthless Aggression Era, the PG era, the new era, and there were a lot of good things there. There were a lot of great performances. There were so many good stories, but the business wasn't popular. It wasn't hot. We were still kind of dealing with people missing The Rock and Stone Cold every week. But now, like, watching Mania in Philadelphia and hearing everyone just on their feet cheering like they're insane for Cody Rhodes to win the belt. I've not seen someone that popular since Daniel Bryan. I would actually go so far as to say I've not seen someone this popular with the fans since Stone Cold. Because I think Cody, because of his name, because we've seen him go from someone who was kind of wasted by WWE, then saw him in AEW, see him now, he is probably the greatest wrestling protagonist that we've had in a very, very, very long time.
I would agree 100%. And just I would just trust in the characters they have now, just because of the characters that were presented because of creative. But what my main thing is, and I'll get your thoughts from it, but I feel like in the past 4 or 5 eras that we've had since 2000, since we've been born, they've took a little piece of what was good and they've made it for the better, and I think that's what this era is going to be, and a lot of people are going to like it because the universe is so much in depth with what they're doing in creative, and they're listening. They're not being like Vince, where no, 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 I'm not doing this. It's just there's a lot of communication and like um, what's the word where you're working collaboration with the universe,
Mhm.
and that's what we didn't have back then. And look where it is now. I
Yep,
just love it. That's why I'm still gonna watch it until the day I die.
absolutely. Um, I fully agree with you. I think it is a testament to Triple H. I think it's a testament to everyone who's in creative. I think it's a testament to all the wrestlers that there's so many people right now who are doing so well in the company that are making a lot of good money, turning a lot of heads, making a lot of people invested in the show again. It's been a long time since WWE has been popular. I say that they've always been successful. They've always been a household name. But when I was growing up, it was a thing where like if you said that you were a wrestling fan, people would kind of give you a weird look.
Exactly.
And now it's so much more people in the mainstream are really paying attention to wrestling again and enjoying what they're seeing.
I agree. Do you have anything else to add with WWE or just like whatever we talked about throughout this episode?
Um, I guess the final thing I would add is just when you are a person who can say that they changed an industry, it becomes really easy for you to form an echo chamber around yourself and stop listening to anyone, including the people who sometimes know more or better than you do. Fact of the matter is, I don't know if I would be a wrestling fan if WWE didn't exist, and the only reason WWE exists is because of Vince McMahon. Say what you will about him. I'm not condoning anything he's ever done, but he legitimately did revolutionize what wrestling was and what it is today. But then we've seen, he's been a billionaire for 20 years. So for 20 years, he's been just more or less making this shit up on the fly. And it drove a lot of people away, hurt a lot of people, hurt a lot of people who were working for him. Um, and I think Triple H is a person who, like you say, it shows the benefit of remembering, even if you're at the top of the tree, you got to remember every single branch that's holding you up. So he's collaborating, he's open, and I think that's why now when you hear about anyone working inside WWE, they talk about how I don't even want to say wholesome, but just how good a work environment it is now.
I agree. Well, he was part of those eras, and that's why the eras that are now there are what they are because of what he did and what he was a part of.
Mhm.
So it's just the experience that he had, and he didn't even notice it until now he's head of creative and doing all this. He can put those aspects, and he's been in those shoes.
It's true.
So he's definitely making a great product into a product that a lot of more people need to see, even though they don't like wrestling or whatever. Look at it for the story. That's why people watch certain shows, don't they? That's why certain people watch Netflix or watch certain things based on the story that they're watching. See that for
Mhm.
WWE. Don't see it for the stunts and all that. Have fun. Look at the story. Look what's going on. Because it's going to definitely be long-term storytelling. And that's what just Triple H is.
Absolutely.
So, nothing else to add, Ron, after your little spiel?
N- No, I think I've said all I've had on my mind right now.
You finished your story for episode 5?
I think so. I think I finished my story for episode 5. Now I got to finish the story of the display.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to episode 5 with Ron. I don't even know what this is going to be called yet. I got to figure that out. But I'm recording the day before, and I think we're back. But it might be another couple weeks until I upload another episode, or it might be next week. It just really depends on people's schedules. But thank you, Ron, for coming on. We'll have you on again in the future, and hopefully we can have some more fun with more wrestling talks and see where wrestling's at then, like later, probably in the fall quarter or whatever for school. But
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you coming on and being the person you are and just talking about something that you love, just like me.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on, Camden. It's been a lot of fun. It's great just to talk about this with you. Thank you for being the guy you are. Thank you for recording my audio all the way back when and talking some wrestling with me as they were putting blood makeup all on my back. It's been fun.
Yeah, look at the long-term storytelling we're talking about. That's crazy. It's crazy. But,
Yeah.
all right, guys. Thank you guys for joining in, and we'll see you guys for episode 6.